언론에 나오지 않았으면 좋겠다.
I suppose that everybody has heard about the Occupy Wall Street protests, which popularized the notion of the 1%, the 99% versus the 1%, which is basically right. It really is 1% that pulled away. So you had an increase in the incomes of the top fifth relative to the bottom four-fifths was something like 20% before the 1930s. It dropped. A few years ago, there was a survey of the incomes of a very small group, the 25 best paid hedge fund managers. It turned out that the combined income of those 25 men, they were all men, anyway, those 25 men was approximately equal to that of the 80,000 school teachers in New York City for 3 years. More broadly, who are the 1%? And if we look at that, it turns out they are not especially people with high technical skill. What we really are talking about is roughly 70% of the top 1% are executives either in the corporate world or in the world of finance. That a small group of people who are perceived as the best basically get all the rewards. This is a theory known, by the way, it's actually, the official name is the superstar theory, which is release a YouTube video of dancing, like pretending that you're a horse and reach 240 million people. Yes, I've seen that one. But there's a pretty good case that the political changes have, if anything, led the economic changes. That the rightward shift of part of the U.S. political spectrum, which began around 1870, led the rise in inequality, which began around 1980. Creating what can you say? It created an environment that was favorable for corporations, unfavorable for worker organization. The right attitude is to respect the power of the market, to say that you can't simply get any income distribution you want, but that taking account of incentives doesn't mean that there's nothing you can do. There's certainly a lot of reason to believe that you can ameliorate high inequality through taxes and benefits. That you can ensure that everyone has essential health care, regardless of where they stand on the income scale. That you can, in fact, require that the wealthy pay their share of taxes. And we need to try and get it back. And for countries that are just on their way up, you notice I said almost nothing about Korea because I don't know enough, but you should take that lesson to heed. You yourself need to think about what kind of society you want and try to build it, and not assume that just letting the market rip will give you everything you need. Respect the market, don't worship it, and try and produce a society that spreads its benefits widely, because only in that way can you also be a democratic society, more broadly defined. Thank you.
That somehow small business is always where virtue resides. We have a lot of that in the United States, the notion that small business is good and big business is bad, and that all good things come from small business. And that's not necessarily true. And on the other hand, large businesses can be a source of middle-class incomes. At least my instinct when people talk about breaking up, when they single out big business as the enemy, I'm suspicious. It's usually it's not the size of the company so much as whether there's anything to check their power. And if I can say, actually, we talk a lot about the too big to fail banks. That's a much more relevant issue.